Hello, this is Keith Lane from the Durham County Budget Office, and this training session is going to focus on doing a supplemental budget amendment transaction using the FMBB transaction in SAP. A supplemental budget is when you do normally it's when you do a budget amendment, when you get new revenue from a grant, for instance, and you want to budget that revenue in your budget, and more importantly then budget an equal amount of expenditures in your expenditure budget so you can spend that grant revenue. Normally the Board of County Commissioners has to approve this, but you also have to do a transaction in SAP to put it into your physical budget, which is controlled and tracked in SAP. So let's get started. If you've seen the FMBB training session on transfer, getting to that particular transaction is exactly the same way. You go to the SAP menu and you go to accounting, and in accounting you drop down to public sector management, and in public sector management you go to budgeting, which is already open. Normally it looks like this. Under public sector management you go to funds management, then budgeting, and then budget control system. And under budget control system you go to entry documents, and under entry documents you go to FMBB. And if you right click on FMBB and say add to favorites, it will go up in this blue section up here where you see I already have one. But adding it to favorites by right clicking add to favorites will put it up here, and you don't have to then drill down to 5-6 folder levels. You can just have it right here and click on it directly, and that way you don't have to remember where it is. Or you can always come up here to the top and type in FMBB and hit the check mark or the enter key, and that will get you to the transaction itself. Let's use this this blue FMBB shortcut transaction that I told you could right click and store up here under your favorites. And when I click on the transaction, it takes a second to open up, and for me it defaults to this particular look for the FMBB transaction. To make sure you get the same look as what I'm looking at here on the screen or what you're looking at on the screen, you need to go to extras and change the budgeting workbench layout, and under that you need to click on those white boxes and hit this little down arrow, and you need to hit the check button, and you'll get a number of choices, and the one you want to pick is called conversion layout. Double click it. You only have to do this once. Make it the default layout by double clicking it till you get a check button. Hit the green check and hit another green check, and now you have the version that we will be doing the training video on, and that hopefully is the only version you would ever have to use. So we will start now. Now there are several, every box that you need to fill out will be in white. In this case some of them are already pre-filled out for you, but there are key areas here that you need to focus on. The first is under process. There are only two processes that most of you will ever deal with, and that is either a transfer or a supplement. You hit the arrow key and it will give you the choices. Again, the only two you would ever deal with are transfer and supplement. If you want to do a transfer, there's another training video that you can use to understand how to do that. On this one we're going to focus on a supplement. Budget category is always going to be payment, so don't worry about that. Remember, I said that white boxes are only the ones you can fill out. This blue box will be filled out automatically with numerical data based on information we put down in this lower box. But the version you will need to use is always 0. You don't even need to do the drop down box. It will always be 0. So type a 0 in. The document type will always be norm, N-O-R-M. So when you get used to this, you can type in norm and rather than hit the drop down box. The document date is the date in which the meeting is occurring that you want this particular supplemental budget to occur. Again, I told you that supplemental budgets are when additional dollars are normally going into your budget, and that usually, most 99% of the time, needs board approval, and that board approval happens on usually regular work sessions. So you should know the regular work session date that this particular number's going on. Let's assume it's today, although you would be getting us the information much earlier. But this is the date of the board meeting. The fiscal year is the fiscal year that we're in, that runs from July to June. This fiscal year is 2013 to 14. You just use the last year of this current fiscal year, 2014. The period's an interesting number. Our fiscal year starts in July, and so July is month number 1. Currently we are in September, so July is 1, August is 2, September is 3. You want to pick the month that you're doing this transaction. In this case it is September, so it's 3. If it were October, it would be 4. If it were December, it would be 6. If it were June, it would be 12. But it's September, so it's 3. So let's select 3. The budget type, if you don't know, click on the white box. Your job is to select norm. It will always be norm for normal budget. You can then, if you start remembering these, you do enough, you can always just type it in. The grant is always going to be not relevant, so you don't even have to do the drop down box, which will give you many selections. It will always be not underscore relevant. You type that in. Now you're ready to put in the numbers. You can use this little, see where these little dots are on here. Anywhere you hover over that line, you can make this box higher or lower depending on how many lines you're using to put money into, or however many revenue line items you have. In this case, we're just going to do one revenue line item, and then we're going to do 2 expenditure line items for an example of a supplemental budget. So let's say that the budget office needed money to buy an entire new budget system because the one you're looking at here is too hard to use, and it's going to cost $500,000. So we're going to put in the expenditure line item where we need the money, and the budget office exists in the general fund. To find the fund number you need, you click on fund down here, and if you click on this box, it brings up a search box. If you leave it empty, it will give you a listing of all the funds, and there's the general fund, 100, 101, and 4 zeros. You can type it in directly, 100, 101, and 4 zeros here. You don't have to select down if you know it, and I'll give you an example here in the fund center. I know the budget office's fund center is 4250 1340 00. It's all 10-digit numbers. If I didn't know it, I click on the box, click on it, and scroll down until I found it. The commitment item is going to be software, and I know it's a 5300 line item, but I don't know the rest, so I am going to have to use the white box and search. If I go under commitment item and type, I know it starts with 5300, and I hit a star, it will search only those line items that start with 5300. And let's look down here, and there's software. That's what we're buying. And I know the functional area that the budget office exists under. It exists under general government, which is 1 and 9 zeros. If I click on the box, it shows me all of them. I can select it there, or again, I can always type in 1 and 9 zeros. The funded program always will be not relevant. Not underscore relevant, because we are not yet budgeting at the funded program level for grants. We may charge at the grant level, but we don't budget at that level. So let's pretend the cost of the software is $500,000. I put the number in, and then I put a text, cost of new budgeting software. So I have an expenditure, and I need to find a revenue. Well, we don't have a grant to pay for this software, although it would be lovely if we did. But let's say we were going to use extra sales tax that we collected. It could be almost any revenue source except for a few, but normally for most of y'all it's going to be grant related revenue or donations if you're the library, or some other revenue source that you've got. It could be extra fees that you've collected to pay for a new ambulance because one broke down permanently. Any number of reasons, but we're just going to use a particular revenue source at this case. 100, 101. I'm typing it in this time instead of picking it from the selection. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the fund center in this case is sales tax revenue is usually is budgeted as a revenue source in the finance department. So that's going to be the fund center, 413 1000, and the commitment item is going to be fund balance. We have to go into our savings account to pay for this because it was an unplanned expenditure that we need to find money for. We have to go to our fund balance, our savings account, to pay for it. And I just happen to know the revenue number, 4900 100 00. And here's a key thing to note: all expenditures start with a 5, all revenues start with a 4. If you're unclear about the revenue, again, use the button, click on it, and start with a 4 star, and if you hit the check button, it will give you a listing, a whole bunch, more than 500, of all the different revenue sources there are. If you have questions about revenue structures, give your budget analyst a call and we'll discuss this with you. There is a method to all this madness, and each one of these 4s have a reason for being. And I'll give you a quick example. 4100, 41 and 2 zeros are generally tax related commitment items. 4200 look like what they say, they're mostly fees. 4300 revenue line items are intergovernmental revenues, and so on down the line. Back to the supplemental budget we're developing. We're using fund balance from the finance department budget, and the finance department exists in the same functional area as the budget office. 1 and 9 zeros, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's not relevant. An easy way to, instead of retyping it, I can just move the yellow button up top, hit Control C or copy, and then Control V or paste, and it pastes it right down. It's going to be the same amount, 500,000, 500,000. The text is going to be the same, and there we go. Now we have, in theory, in just a second I'll show you, we have a balanced revenue budget that's going up $500,000. That's the fund balance here, and we have an expenditure budget going up $500,000. There's just a little bit more additional data that needs to be added. There's a person responsible. That's you who is developing this supplemental budget. In this case, it's my name, Keith Lane, and the text is generally what the supplemental budget is doing. In this case, it's the cost of new budgeting software. This helps us search all these many documents that are created by the budget office and you when you do transfers and supplemental budgets throughout the entire year. We can search on the header text, or the person responsible helps us focus down on things. If I go back and click on the tab header data, you will see now that it has 2 blue line items. Expenditures equals $500,000 and revenues equal $500,000. It's very important that those two balance, because when you're adding money to a budget, fundamentally the budget has to be balanced. In other words, revenues have to equal expenditures. In this case they do. I have 1 revenue line item and 1 expenditure line item. If you do it, you might have 1 revenue line item, a grant revenue line item, that might be for $500,000 that may fund a whole program. In that case, it might go across 10 expenditure line items. You might have a little bit of that revenue go to salaries and benefits. You'll have a little bit that goes for operating costs. You have a little bit that goes for miscellaneous contracted services, and you may have some money that goes for capital line items. So you may have 1 revenue line item and 10 or 15 expenditure line items. But all the expenditure line items will need to add up to the 1 revenue line item. Again, these two numbers will always need to be in balance. If they're not, the system will let you know, and how it will let you know is you'll go and check the document, which sends the system out to the existing system, and make sure that all the fund numbers, the fund center numbers, the commitment item numbers, functional, all these numbers will work and are correct, and that this document can actually happen. You'll hit check document, and it will run, and you should get, if it's checked correctly, a little green line down at the bottom here, green check box. It says no errors detected, document has been checked successfully. Now you're ready to send this document on to the budget office for review, and where they will then post the document to the budget when the board has approved it. To send this document through workflow, through SAP workflow, where it shows up in a budget analyst inbox, you go to the pre-post and you click on pre-post, and that will send the document away, and a budget analyst will check it and let you know that it has been approved once the board has approved it. I'm not going to pre-post this document because I don't want to send it in the system and then have to delete it. But that is in total how you would do a supplemental budget in the FMBB transaction in SAP. If you have any questions about this training or about extra information that was missed or you need to use, feel free to call your budget analyst. Thank you.